It's another edition of Monday Night Sports Talk on the AirNetwork.net and 94.1 FM in Huntingdon. Welcome to Monday Night Sports Talk. Greg Banks in the studio tonight. Dave Shannon live in Altoona. And joining us is a good friend of Dave's, Steve Miller from Milesburg, Pennsylvania. Welcome aboard, Steve. I guess you and Dave have worked together in your history at some given time.
That's correct. We've crossed paths many times. I got to watch Dave in action before, and then we got to work together as well.
Oh, that's cool. Dave, you have any cool stories to tell about Steve other than the fact he was in that band that was kind of
That's it. That's my whole history with Steve.
He went from the band to working in radio, doing sports. We heard his story. He worked for some giants in the industry. Hey, WBLF, we remember those guys, and WGMR, and some of the Tyrone stations. So anyhow, Steve, welcome aboard. What are you doing these days? Are you retired like Dave and I, or what?
No, I currently work for...
Whoops.
I currently work... unable to hold my phone. No, I just dropped it in the car.
Oh, I'm sorry.
I work for a well-known political figure in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania.
Oh, okay.
Jake Corman.
Yeah, we know Jake.
So,
well, fantastic.
That allows me some time to travel the state and also be able to do what I like to do, which is call sports when I have the opportunity.
All right. Well, we appreciate it. I did have a chance to hear you a little bit on the Bald Eagle area game, and your other friend Dave that was there with you. I believe that was last Friday night, right? Couple of Fridays.
That was a night that Bald Eagle would like to forget about when that homecoming.
I'm sure, but not as much as the night that Phillipsburg would like to forget. We'll talk about that and other sports coming up throughout the night. By the way, if you'd like to give us a call tonight, join us on Sports Talk, 814-506-0609. Again, 814-506-0609. Dave, first thing out, Steelers, of course, over KC yesterday. It's a whole different story. It looked like a brand-new Ben, Le'Veon Bell, Antonio Brown, and even the defense showed up yesterday. What happened in Kansas City?
Well, they have a history against the Chiefs, and it just continued to play out, much to the chagrin of the Chiefs in this particular case. The defense, to me, although somewhat disappointing that they seem to only be able to play 3 quarters effectively. The fourth quarter, they weren't nearly as effective as they were in the first 3, but they basically tamped down Kansas City to absolutely nothing. And for an undefeated team in the NFL to get tamped down that hard, that means your defense is playing at a very high level. And a lot of coverage, a lot of great coverage against the Kansas City receivers yesterday. Now, I understand that Kansas City had some injuries, which are somewhat key, and that, one of which was on defense. But bottom line is you put your team together and you have to plan for injuries. And theoretically, you have somebody that would be able to come in and step up and take the place of that person. And the Steelers were able to consistently beat the replacement. And I forget his name, but his number was 49. And he was beaten many times by the Steelers offense. There is one thing I would like to say, and offensive lines a lot of the time don't get the credit they deserve. But if I were handing out a game ball at the end of yesterday's game, it would have been to David DeCastro. Some of the most amazing blocks that I have seen that, Le'Veon Bell doesn't gain the yardage without good blocking in front of him.
Right. And
DeCastro released him a couple of times for huge gains down the field and made Le'Veon Bell kind of look like the Le'Veon Bell of old. And Ben, he did throw the one interception. And quite frankly, Antonio Brown made him look really good by just hanging around there in the sideline and taking a pass off the helmet of the Kansas City defender and then running it in for a touchdown to boot.
That's been played on every playoff and highlight show today on
Has
television.
To be.
Yeah, it's unreal, that catch. Hey, Steve Miller, jump in here now. You're in the Milesburg area. I'm not sure if you have an affiliation with, say, the Steelers or perhaps even the Eagles, because there's that line of demarcation, Center County, Mifflin County, once you get past Huntingdon County. You normally watch the Steeler games, and did you watch any of that game yesterday?
I was traveling yesterday and listened to it on satellite radio, and I got the Kansas City feed.
Okay.
And it's funny, I was listening when the pass that should have been intercepted became the the Antonio Bryant touchdown, and what a difference in the perceptions of how that play actually was based on the Kansas City guys versus what I listened to later on with ESPN talking about the play.
Right.
But I think one thing I didn't hear, why Andy Reid went for it on fourth down and didn't take the 3 points with like 4.5 left to go in the game. I didn't hear anything about him asked that at the press conference after the game. I'd like to know why he didn't opt for that. When you're not scoring any points, why not take the 3?
At least.
That's one thing that could come back and bite him at the end of the year, because fortunately for him, Broncos lose, so they didn't really lose anything in terms of with losing their perfect season. The Broncos now have 2 losses instead of 1.
Yeah, exactly. Hey, Stephen, we happen to lose you because if you're on the road and we lose you, we'll just cut you off. But thanks for joining us here on the Monday Night Sports Talk. Dave, let me ask you this about ground and pound. That really was the ticket for the Steelers yesterday. They got back to the running game, which was very important, because that's where they were really moving the ball on the ground yesterday. Yeah, well, let's hope that Mr. Haley, Todd Haley, made note of that during the game yesterday. He tends to not make note of things that work. Right.
And, walks in with a game plan, and he's going to go with that no matter what. Mm-hmm. And he doesn't pay attention to the game and make adjustments as the game goes along.
Yeah.
But I digress on that issue. Ground and pound was a big deal, and it certainly helped to – and credit to Ben, too, because I don't know how much play calling he does at the line, but it looked like exactly what Tony Romo was saying on the CBS telecast.
Right.
Was exactly what he was doing. He'd come up, he'd see 3 guys on the line, and he'd know that they were in a pass defense, so it made sense to run. If they had 4 guys up on the line, then it made sense to pass, and that seemed to work out every time it was tried. And like I say, I know Ben does audible at the line, so credit to him for recognizing what Kansas City was doing. And everyone thought that Kansas City would change at halftime. That was the prevailing opinion. And the Steelers continued to be able to gain a lot of yardage against them. Here's the biggest disappointment. Quite frankly, the Steelers should have won that game by 14 or maybe more. With the amount of yardage that they piled up in that game, to only end up with 19 is kind of a sin. So that was the one downfall of that whole game as far as the Steelers go. It's great to rack up yardage between the 20s, but you got to get it into the end zone.
Well, what was weird, the Chiefs entered that game leading the NFL in points per game, about 32.5, and they were second in time of possession. That all went out the window yesterday, Steve Miller, but the Steelers showed that the best way to keep Alex Smith, the NFL's pass rating leader, off the board was to just go after him. And they obviously showed that in the defense. Again, you had a chance to listen to it. What was the perspective from the Kansas City side? I'd just be interested in knowing what they said on radio yesterday.
Well, there was a lot of as the game progressed, and there was a lot of frustration about the way Alex Smith was overthrowing his receivers, wasn't really sharp. Then they started talking about the injuries that they had, and they were already looking, by the time the fourth quarter started, they were already looking to the once fourth quarter started looking at Thursday night and talking about the short week turnaround when they have to play the Raiders.
Oh, no doubt.
To get back to the idea of the Steelers, Steeler football is you run the ball, and then you go play action and you throw the ball down the field. I think Steelers have relied too much on 84 this year. It's sort of like with the Cowboys.
Right.
Des Bryant has to get his touches before everybody else gets the ball too. And I wonder if that's part of the problem going on in Pittsburgh, because, you've already got Brian who wants to get out because he's not part of the offense. And they keep bringing in people, but it always seems to be that Ben goes back to 84 when they should just be throwing the ball only when they need to or when the run sets up the pass plays, and then get everybody involved. I mean, I didn't even see how many balls did Jesse James catch yesterday, or was even targeted.
I don't even remember him being targeted yesterday. I believe.
Yeah, he was.
Was he?
He was.
Okay.
Yeah.
But I didn't see. Remember how? But here's a thought. Dave was harping on that actually all season, weren't you, Dave, about Antonio Brown? It's like he was always targeting Brown and not looking off to maybe find a Bryant. Now we find out Bryant wants to be traded. And,
right.
The other wide receivers, I think they're underworked. And for all intents and purposes, it was basically the Antonio show again with Bell on the ground because of the ground and pound. I wanted to add this because Chad States did have a chance to send us a note, just some random thoughts about the game yesterday. He says you can't predict it. Steelers look like the team that they were supposed to be, but they always do against Kansas City. But some teams just can't beat others, like, for instance, Steelers versus the Jags or the Steelers at Chicago, Dave.
Oh, those were Jaguars.
Cleveland.
Maybe I go ahead and give you a little bit of a pass on there. That's a little bit better team.
Right.
But then again, you know, when your quarterback throws 5 interceptions, it's going to be an ugly score.
Exactly.
By the time it's all said and done. Chicago was, and I just watched the PTI show with Kornheiser and Wilbon.
Right.
And Michael Wilbon basically said it looked like the Steelers were completely disinterested in playing that game.
Right.
And I would have to agree with him.
Yeah.
They just did have that appearance to them that it was like, we're here.
Yeah.
You know, we don't really care what happens. We're just here. And but that is true. I mean, yesterday, I guess a lot of folks thought that it seems that time to time, the Jets have the Patriots number.
Right.
But Jets came up a little bit short yesterday.
And it happens on any given Sunday.
Or did they?
Yeah.
Yes,
that's true. Think about that.
That's still up for debate.
You know what? And that did look to me, and I'm sure, Steve, you're alluding to the fact that was a touchdown. I don't care how many times you play that over. And then somebody said, well, you know what? The NFL had to give Brady something. Well, no, they didn't. They didn't give him enough time on deflating the ball. There's a lot of reasons why that was not a gimme. But having said that, let me ask you this. Monday Night Sports Talk, Greg Banks in the studio, Dave Shannon in Altoona, and we've got Steve Miller out there on the road tonight somewhere around Milesburg. Steve, you got to be in the part of the state where they love the Eagles. Now, the Eagles are looking half decent this year. Are you watching any of those games?
I try not to. I will be honest with you. I'm a lifelong Dallas Cowboys fan.
Okay.
And I say lifelong, 46 years, 47 now, I think.
Right.
But I predicted when the season started, the Eagles were going to win the division.
Right.
And they're proving that second year for Wentz, he has people that can throw the ball and catch it this year.
Right.
They have a decent defense, and it's not a hard offense to learn once you learn it with Peterson, especially since he was a quarterback too.
Right.
So I think they're in the best position to win that division. Elliott's about to probably get his 6-game suspension. He'll probably have to start serving this Sunday. That takes the Cowboys out of the mix.
Yeah.
The Giants won their one game on TV, so they'll be gone.
Yeah.
And it'll just be a battle between the Redskins and the Eagles, and the Eagles already have a game on the Redskins in hand.
Yeah.
I think
the other thing, I was going to say, Steve, I think the other thing about what's made the Eagles so good has been Blunt. They have a legitimate running game there.
Yeah. He's a
better way to help your quarterback is to have a good running back.
He's a former Steeler, right? Isn't that the guy that we chased? He was like, we told him, don't even get on the bus.
Because he was sharing a blunt with Le'Veon Bell.
Yeah, okay. I remember those days. Anyhow, I just wanted to kind of get your read on that, Steve. I'm glad to know you're a Cowboys fan. There's a couple of them that listen to us. Give us a call, by the way, if you're out there, 814-506-0609. 814-506-0609. It's either feast or famine here on Monday Night Sports Talk. Everybody jumping on last week, but we're glad to have Steve Miller with us along with Dave Shannon tonight. Dave, let me kind of get back into something else, the NFL, and we'll kind of wrap this segment up. Aaron Rodgers, man, that cannot be a good thing for the Packers. And, of course, to lose your man with a sort of a Tony Romo injury, if you will, that occurred yesterday. Where do the Packers head from here? Obviously, nowhere good, I guess, huh?
Yeah, I think that pretty well checks them out for the rest of the season. to be honest with you, because there's no guarantee that Aaron is going to be able to get healthy and get back even at the end of the season.
Right.
They are going to have to operate, as I recently read.
Right.
So that automatically, I say he's done for the season, and I think that kind of dashes the hopes that the Green Bay Packers had, which leaves the NFC wide open.
Yeah, it does.
And I'll tell you, I got to be honest with you, it may be the Eagles who end up on top.
That may be true. Yeah.
Yeah, they've just been playing good football, and now that you take Green Bay out of the mix, and then the Falcons yesterday.
Oh yeah.
The Falcons get beaten at home.
Mm-hmm.
So not pretty things going on in the NFC. It's still early. You know, we're only 6 games in.
Let me ask you guys this. I'll ask Steve first, and then I'll ask Dave. Okay, in light of the fact that Rodgers is out, and of course you have probably a backup quarterback, the idea now that Colin Kaepernick may have a lawsuit on his hands against the NFL, which is kind of ridiculous in itself, but it could actually be something as the owners meet tomorrow and Wednesday, I guess, at their annual meeting. Steve, what are the chances that somebody from Green Bay calls up Colin Kaepernick? Hey, we could use a backup quarterback or a backup quarterback.
I think had his legal team not floated the idea of the lawsuit, he'd have probably gotten a phone call.
Yeah.
Now I think the league goes into that full, we're in legal mode. There's no interaction. There's no discussion. That's it. We'll see you in court kind of situation.
Yeah.
If a court even he wants to listen to it.
Right.
I saw some story today. They're floating the idea that Romo comes out of the booth and goes back to and plays for the Packers.
Hey, listen, don't come out of the booth, man. He's so good. I think he does a great job in the booth.
He's very good.
Yeah.
I think he's going to make Chris Collinsworth look like a very dumb guy.
Oh, Chris Collinsworth is he's another generation. Nobody even knows who he is.
Right.
All I know is he saw the turf at Three Rivers Stadium more often than not.
How about that? Go ahead, Steve.
I don't think anybody goes after Kaepernick. I think from what I heard so far today, the Packers are going to stick with their backup.
Right.
And who'd have thought that Sam Bradford was going to be able to renegotiate a deal with the Vikings after this year for a lot of money?
Isn't that incredible? Dave, your feelings on that, and we'll wrap it up, the Colin Kaepernick thing. I kind of agree with Steve when he said, hey, you sort of like closed the door on that once you made the threat. I think it's pretty much done.
I think it would have been a tough one by and large because of the Green Bay market to start with. It may have been something that they may have been willing to overlook, but I don't know what they would have done to their fan base because I can't imagine the reaction that's been going on to all of the demonstrations this year in the NFL. And you pull in the guy that is the guy that's credited with starting it all, and Colin Kaepernick into a town like Green Bay. I don't know if that works, but I think Steve's dead on. Now that the paperwork has been filed for a lawsuit,
right? I agree with you there. I definitely agree with you. Hey, let me jump into something else here as we have a moment. Real quick, Clemson now, of course, getting beat by, and I have no idea. Hold on, let me check something here. I'm here. I just have to kill some music that is coming into our studio somehow or other. I think I have to shut something down here. Okay, there it is.
No, can you hear me?
I can hear you, Dave.
Now I'm here. Okay. I'm back, guys. I'm sorry about that. I had to kill that for a second. We were getting some music overload here. But let me ask you this. Now that Clemson got beat by Syracuse, let me ask Steve first because I know he's closer to Penn State, and then I'll ask you, Dave. Number 2, is that the spot that they need to be? I mean, this is where they've been wanting to be all season long. And wasn't that crazy how Syracuse beat up on Clemson?
It's amazing who your friends become the further the year goes on, isn't it?
Isn't it?
You know, I think Saturday night will be a good indication of where the season goes for Penn State, and by next Saturday we'll know what kind of team is really at Happy Valley. If they beat Michigan and Ohio State back-to-back weeks, I think they actually have a shot to beat Alabama in the national championship game.
And I got to ask this question, Dave, before you jump in there. Chad State's asking the question. Penn State, number 2, is it justified?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
Teams in behind them. I don't know if you can move them above Penn State. once again, there's still going to be, because this is just now, and there's a lot of time between now and when all of that gets decided.
Right.
And, of course, the Big Ten championship game may be deciding who from the Big Ten gets into the championship game.
Oh, yeah.
Looks like if things roll out the way they are, it's going to be another Penn State-Wisconsin game. And in which case, the winner of that is going to be the one that moves on into the national championship picture.
Well,
and it depends, because it's at this point in the season, and it depends on what those other teams do too.
Yeah.
I don't know if TCU is going to finish out strong. Don't know what Ohio State's going to do, but things as they sit right now, it would, I see Penn State in the national championship game. And one of the things we've talked about on the show that I think Penn State gets shorted on as far as their credit goes, because their offense always gets talked about because it's so darn good, but it's defense. And as we noted in last week's show, John O'Korn from Huntingdon, as quarterback of Michigan, is, it's not going to be easy. That defense is very difficult to play against.
Right.
And that's going to be that's going to be what makes Penn State's season. The offense is going to do what the offense does, but the determining factor as to where Penn State ends up and that they may be playing for a national championship, credit for that is going to go to the defense if that's the situation they end up in.
I think it's still kind of early in the season. Yeah, we'll see how the next 3 weeks shake out. Chad States writes, Michigan offense is having grave trouble in the passing game. Not all O'Korn's fault, as his receivers have not done him any justice. He goes on to say, homecoming for John this Saturday when he gets back to Pennsylvania. And if you don't think he won't be motivated to play his very best, well, you're totally wrong. Chad predicts, by the way, Penn State by 10 as they take on Michigan this weekend in a defensive battle throughout. Steve Miller, you having a prediction on that upcoming game with Penn State and Michigan?
Well, I don't know John personally. I do know his father, who's a friend of mine, and I hope he has great games beginning next week, but not this coming Saturday. I think
Gary know
that. Penn State's going to win.
Yeah.
But I think it's going to be close, and it'll be a question like Dave was talking about. Will a defense come to play in that game? Yeah. Harbaugh is going to have his team fired up to come in here.
Yeah.
And I've sat in the stands and watched Michigan teams come in and just run all over Penn State teams in the past at Beaver Stadium, and I don't care for it.
Yeah.
So I'm hoping that the whiteout in the crowd, which I think is going to be really geared up for a 7:30 kickoff, I think it's going to be something special.
Tailgate starts at 7:30 in the morning. What do you mean? We'll be revved up by noon, man. Hey, listen, Dave, what's your prediction, Dave, on this game? I mean, Chad says by 10.
28-14 Penn State.
28-14 Penn State. All right, sounds like a winner. I'm going to be geared up for the game. By the way, I got to and I wish Jimmy Ty was here tonight here on Monday Night Sports Talk so I could get his feeling on this game. But I know that I would deflate his ego once we got to that Pitt NC State game where Pitt lost that game 35-17. I think they lost another quarterback, if I'm not mistaken. Didn't they, Dave? Didn't DiNucci go down this weekend or something?
No, they took DiNucci out and they used his backup for a while.
Okay.
And then eventually, I think at the very end, they brought DiNucci back out. So they just they have a plethora of problems at Pitt.
Yeah. Yeah, I understand. Max Brown is they lost him to shoulder surgery.
Yes.
Looks like it's more devastating than expected. NC State leading 21-14 with about 2 minutes and 32 seconds left in third. Narduzzi pulled his starter, Ben DiNucci, from the game after he'd thrown a touchdown and an interception. Anyhow, DiNucci went on to just say, I just, didn't feel it that game. He was feeling it, but he was feeling the rush of the defense from NC State, unfortunately, who now are, I believe, 6-1 on the season in Pitt. I can't even recall what the record is, but I know it ain't good. I don't know. If they were to play Penn State again, Steve, just say, just for giggles, play them one more time, how bad would that be? I mean, just...
I would think it would probably about 42-14.
Really? Wow.
Yeah.
Pitt is just having a rough season this year. They're going to have to go through some rebranding, obviously recruiting, or whatever the case might be, but they're having a difficult time. Meanwhile,
hey, just so they keep the old style uniforms.
Oh,
I love the
those.
old unis.
I do too. That throws back to the old Dorset days, man. I remember those.
Oh yeah, that's a Merino Dorset uniform that they're wearing there at home.
Exactly. So anyhow, Pitt losing that big game against NC State, and they've got Duke to look forward to, Dave. Now, don't know much about Duke, but what do you think they'll do against Duke this weekend?
Is that game at Duke?
I believe it's at Duke, yeah.
If it's at Duke,
Yes,
I'm
it
going
is.
with Duke. Yeah, I'm going to say Duke ends up beating Pitt this week.
Really?
It's a floundering program, and Duke is a pretty competitive football team now. They're not just a basketball school
Isn't
anymore.
that the truth? Yeah. And go ahead.
I was going to say they're rapidly becoming a competitive football program. So, yep, Duke for me.
And what's your thoughts on that, Steve, if you will, the Duke and Pitt on Saturday?
I think Duke wins probably by 8 or 9. 28-20 maybe, something along those lines. 17-9 maybe.
Okay.
Something along those lines.
Anyhow, it's Monday Night Sports Talk here on the airnetwork.net and 94.1 FM. Greg Banks in the studio. Dave Shannon live in Altoona, and we've got Steve Miller, his friend from over in Milesburg this evening. Hey, you actually in Milesburg, or are you traveling now on the road with your state rep? What's going on?
Well, actually, right now I am standing just outside Rogers Stadium in Bellefonte. There's a JV game going on between Bellefonte and Central, and I'm standing just outside the gate watching what's going on right now. I went to Central on Friday night to watch the Red Raiders play the Dragons. It was a rather interesting game to watch.
Well, tell us about that game on Friday that you watched as Bellefonte beat Central in that game, I believe. And, Central's our opponent this week, Steve. They're taking on Huntingdon, which is undefeated, by the way, at 8-0.
Yes, the only loss that Bellefonte has is to the Bearcats. So there'll be a lot of Red Raiders cheering on the Dragons this week to beat Huntingdon.
All right,
the team that I saw destroy Bald Eagle at home is going to be hard to beat. So
really,
Bellefonte can wish all they want. They're a solid team.
Yes, they are.
Is fundamentally sound. They can throw, they can pass, and they're playing good defense when they need to play good defense. And they're going to be very competitive once they get into postseason play. Until I see different, the Bearcats are the team coming out of the central part of the state that are going to be playing in December.
And speaking of the Bearcats, they overwhelmed Phillipsburg on Friday night, 61-6. Dave, you were there at the game. It was a record-breaking night again for Jonathan Price. And, of course, Ian Border had sort of a rough night because it sounded like he was having maybe some ankle problems or slippage, if you will. But for all intents and purposes, it was a running clock again on Friday night against the Mounties. What your thoughts in that game?
Well, the thing about Ian Border was he had a little bit of trouble getting traction there at the beginning of the game, and we were wondering what may have been going on in that particular case. But as the game went on, and the other big thing that Huntingdon did was switch to an I formation. Mm-hmm. And once they switched to the I formation, he was back to the old Ian Border that we've come to know and love here over this season.
Right.
Because he started to gain big chunks of yardage again. And when he's gaining big chunks of yardage, it's going to add up to a Huntingdon win. Because unlike the Steelers, when Huntingdon gets the ball near the end zone, they actually score touchdowns.
Oh, yeah.
They don't have to call in their field goal kicker. The Bearcats a heck of a game, and it's just a multi-pronged offense. And that's what makes them so difficult to deal with, and a lot of those offensive stars then end up being guys that are on the defense as well.
Right.
And they play defense as well as they play offense. And so you've got a team. Obviously, if there's only 6 points scored during the game by PO, that says a lot. And you scored 61, so your defense must be doing something right.
And the other thing is Huntingdon does go deep, obviously. Go ahead, Steve. Yes, you were going to say?
Well, and you look at what they did the week before. They put 45 up against Bald Eagle and shut them out.
Yeah.
So in 2 weeks, they've scored 106 points and gave up 6.
I'd like to know the point. Yeah.
That's pretty solid football there for 2 weeks in a row with two schools that have decent histories of football and have some solid athletes. They gave them 6 points. They allowed 6 points between 2 games.
Well, anyhow, Chad States.
That's solid defense.
And Chad State sends in a note tonight saying this game with Central is huge. Central is 5-3, but he says throw the records out the window, Dave, for this game because both teams have had this date circled on their calendar since back in August. Roaring Spring or Martinsburg is where good teams go to die as the home field advantage is big in this venue. It'll be so big, Dave, you and Chad are going to have to fight for a seat in the press box. However,
so it turns out.
However, the Cats are a tightly bonded group with a singular focus. Now, this is Chad. Remember, he writes his stuff. He's a writer, for goodness sake. Singular focus on staying undefeated and winning a title. No crap. They can clinch the Mountain League Conference title on Friday, Dave, with a win and secure the top seed in the District 6 playoffs. The team is locked and loaded in all three phases of the game. Hard to defend against as points come from all over the place. You know, they're putting this stuff on the bulletin boards down there when Chad writes it, Dave. That's why these kids are so damn fired up.
No, I think it's because Coach Hootie is riding rain over them, and they know better. They stay focused on each individual particular game, and they don't get overly excited about a whole lot of things. I know it was kind of funny on Friday when Phillipsburg did score their one touchdown.
Oh, man, they were probably mad.
Their quarterback went over to their sideline and did the McSorley home run swing.
I heard you
and it's
say
like,
that.
Well, I'm really glad you did that, seeing that the end the final score was 61-6, for Pete's sake.
Well, he didn't realize that really pissed him off. Then they came out at halftime and said, "Oh, they're still running up with the JVs." Now, I'm just kidding, Steve. It's a sport. It's a team sport. But see, when Chad States writes something, it gets these kids fired up. And so obviously, Chad, continue to write, please.
Well, to be honest with you, that Phillipsburg quarterback's going to be able to tell people in 20 years, yeah, I played against that. I scored the touchdown against that team that went to state. You know, it's going to be an Al Bundy situation.
It will be. And and Al Bundy was famous wherever he came from.
Right.
Hey, listen, that's high school football. We're hoping the Bearcats do well on Friday. Dave Shannon and Chad States have all the action, beginning with the pregame show at 6:45 here on the airnetwork.net and 94.1 FM. It's Monday Night Sports Talk. Greg Banks in the studio, Dave Shannon, Altoona live, and Steve Miller over in the Bellefonte and Milesburg area this evening. We're going to take a break. We'll be back with, of course, more to come. Major League Baseball. We got the Penguins, and perhaps we'll talk about something you'd like to talk about. Give us a buzz, 814-506-0609. We'll be right back in a minute.
Sometimes facts are hard to face. Statistics show that obesity is a problem in the United States, and it's not getting any better. At Simone Family Chiropractic, we understand this problem. We also know that obesity leads to very serious health problems later in life. There is a way to cleanse your body and get back to optimum health. It is called the Doctor-Supervised ChiroThin System, and it teaches you how and what to eat in the real world. Call us at Simone Family Chiropractic at 814-643-2616, or stop in and see us at 613 Washington Street in Huntingdon, across from All American Pizza, or find us on Facebook.
Call Austin Smith Heating and Plumbing for affordable heating, plumbing, and drain cleaning services in Huntingdon. Count on 12 years of ensured excellent service when it comes to heating, plumbing, ventilation, and drain cleaning. Call Austin Smith Heating and Plumbing, available evenings and weekends at an affordable rate. Call 814-506-5128. That's 506-5128 for Austin Smith Heating and Plumbing in Huntingdon. The Huntingdon Moose Family Center 223 is the heart of the community. To join friends who have served the community for over 100 years. Enjoy all the summer activities and check out our Facebook page or website for more information. The Huntingdon Moose Family Center 223, serving the community with the best value in town. Join today.
D.C. Goodman & Sons and the Goodman family are committed and dedicated to excellence by supporting quality education and athletics for all youth of Huntingdon County. For over 3 generations, D.C. Goodman & Sons and their staff of quality tradesmen have provided excellent service in the installation of plumbing, mechanical and industrial piping, electrical, and fire sprinkler systems. Residential services are also available. D.C. Goodman & Sons and the Goodman family will continue to serve the community, and thank you for your support. The Goodman family wishes you the best to all area students in your pursuit of excellence.
Monday Night Sports Talk. You can give us a call and get in the next 25 minutes at 814-506-0609. Again, 814-506-0609. You can talk with Dave Shannon live in Altoona. Also, Steve Miller in Milesburg, or yours truly, Greg Banks, here live in the studio. Give us a buzz. Hey, Major League Baseball, Dave, let me see what Chad has to say about that as we kick off this segment, and we'll kind of chat among ourselves. He says the Astros are the real deal. Chad Stay says, I think they sweep my beloved Yankees in this series. They are a complete team in terms of defense, offense, and pitching. Meanwhile, Dodgers up 2-0, heading to Chi-Town. Could drop 1 or 2 there, but we'll come back. L.A. clinches it. So he's saying L.A. and Houston in the series, man.
Well, and I would have to agree with that because here's the thing. I am really having trouble with the Cubs this year. I don't really think they deserve to be in the postseason. Yeah, they won the games, blah, blah, blah. Mm-hmm. Here's the thing that I have a problem with the Cubs about. They came out and they coasted through 2/3 of the season and were really very mediocre as they came toward the end of the season. And then they just kind of flipped the switch and finished out strong and dealt the Milwaukee Brewers into no-no land when it comes to being in the postseason.
Right.
So the bottom line is I'm just not a big Cubs fan this year. I was behind them last year, but not this year. And the Dodgers really have – I've watched some Dodger games late at night and saw them come from behind and win games. So I got to love the Dodgers. The Houston Yankees series has been interesting in that the Houston wins were one-run wins and just, pulling stuff off at the end of the game. And their pitching, obviously, if you're winning by 1 run, is exactly what you need it to be.
Right.
And, of course, a former Pirate taking the hill tonight. Yes, those former Pirates are everywhere, and it's Charlie Morton on the mound for the Astros tonight.
Glad to know he's still in the league.
Oh yeah. He had a really good season. So
all right,
Charlie Morton, CC Sabathia tonight. It should be a very good pitching matchup if statistics play out in the postseason, which they don't always do.
Sometimes you just need a change of venue. Like you mentioned, Charlie, and of course, who do you have on the other side of Houston? The Fireball pitcher for them, and Verlander. Sometimes you just need a little change of scenery. It reminds me of Tim Wakefield, if you remember. He was a Pirate, knuckleballer, but he really made his career happen up in Boston because he just got second life, man, and that's important. Steve Miller, who are you liking in the World Series? Are you following this thing? What's happening?
Well, I thought it was interesting that 29 years to the day that Kirk Gibson goes deep was probably in my lifetime, that one and Joe Carter, the 2 memorable home runs in the World Series. For me. You have that again last night. I think it's going to be funny that it ends up it's the Astros against the Dodgers in the World Series, which everybody on network TV wants it to be the Yankees-Dodgers because you want New York and you want LA.
Two major markets.
Weren't they in the same division 5 years ago?
Yeah, Houston.
That's isn't that kind of funny now that they've switched baseball around so much that in the World Series it's going to be the Astros against the Dodgers.
And it makes me wonder, Dave. Did it become easier for the Houston Astros once they went to the American League? I mean, or...
I think that's coincidence, Greg. I think they were in the process of rebuilding to begin with, and I don't think moving into the Central was necessarily a gift to the Astros. I think they were just in the process of rebuilding, and now it's really playing out on the field.
Wasn't that kind of similar to the Brewers, though, at one time? Weren't the Brewers over in the American League? Then
yes,
came
they
over
were.
To the
They moved from Seattle to Milwaukee.
Yeah, the old Pilots, I remember. I think it was.
Yeah, the old Seattle Pilots, and they moved to Milwaukee and became the Brewers. So,
wow.
I don't know that Milwaukee had that much success after they switched leagues.
Really?
Eventually they did. But once again, I think this is just coincidence with the Astros. I think they were in the process of rebuilding, and it's managed to play out right around the time that they switched from American or National to American.
The American League, yeah. Hey, Steve Miller, let me ask you this.
Well, I think it's a combination. I think just to jump on that one last thing. Sorry, I think it's a combination of they had a lot of number one draft picks because they had so many poor seasons, and then ownership started investing in their good players and locked them up over long
That's
term.
right.
Plus, they weren't afraid to pull the trigger on a good trade to get Verlander.
Verlander, yeah.
You know, had the Nutting family spent some money, who knows, the way the Cubs are playing this year, maybe the Bucks could have actually done something.
Dave, how many times did you bring?
Instead of just throwing it in.
How many times did you mention that, Dave? And we were always thinking, well, you know, if the Pirates would only spend some money. Yeah, you know, if the Pirates would have spent money, they could have got Verlander. You know what I mean? Those are the kind of guys we could get. That ain't going to happen, Steve. It's not going to happen.
No.
Not with the Nuttings there.
No, and I'm afraid McCutcheon has probably played his last game at PNC Park in a home uniform.
That's what I'm thinking too, Dave. Because let me ask you this, Dave, because you really didn't talk much about the Pirates near the end of the season. There's going to be a world of shakeups. Now, we know Hurdle's coming back. We know their GM's coming back. But what about some of those key players like Kutch and maybe a few other ones? You think they played their last game this year for the Pirates? Because, I mean, you got to have a change somewhere.
Not really. I mean, McCutcheon, they wanted to prepare for that this year early by moving Marte to center.
Right.
And they have a number of guys in the minor leagues that are ready to come up, Austin Meadows being one of them, and he got injured at the end of the AAA season, so he didn't get to, show his wares there in the last month of the season. But I don't know that anybody above and beyond that ends up going anywhere. I see... you go around the infield. The one thing they may have to do is look for a third baseman because although David Freese played well, I don't know that he's going to be able to play third again or want to because it's 2 years he had retired, so he came out of retirement for 2 seasons with the Pirates, and it's all dependent on what David feels at this particular point. Jordy Mercer's a fixture at short.
Yeah.
And then James Harrison. No, it's the other one.
Jaha.
Yeah, Jay. But Josh will be there at second base. Bell is going to be your first baseman for a good long time. Cervelli, I don't know if he can stay healthy, but then again, you got the guys coming up out of the minor leagues there.
Right.
And I think they're going to, try to make something happen with the minor league guys as far as the catching goes. So I don't see them losing a whole lot. Mm-hmm. And Adam Frazier, I just love that kid because he hits the daylights out of the ball.
Right.
And it doesn't matter how the league adjusts to him, he is still able to go to the plate and get hits. You see a lot of the young rookies coming up from AAA, and even though they have a big book on what they did in AAA,
right,
it still seems like when these guys come up, they have a pretty easy time of it. And then about after a month or maybe even shorter, depending on the player, the rest of the league seems to figure him out, and then he goes into a tailspin. He might come up hitting 325 or maybe even a little bit higher, and by the time they figure him out, he's down to a 220 hitter.
Right.
That's not the case with Adam Frazier. They cannot. He's that good, and they won't be able to figure him out because he can adjust. And I love that kid. I don't think he can play third base. Might be his biggest downfall. And depending on what Meadows' status is, you may see an outfield of Frazier, Marte, and
Polanco.
Yeah, Polanco and Wright.
Wow.
I think that's what you're going to start with. So, no, I don't see anybody going away this year that's going to be major. And hopefully, we'll know whether they're serious about contending based on whether they go out here after the season is over here with the World Series,
right,
and the winter meetings take place, and if they decide to go out and actually get a pitcher, not a rehab project, which they're so fond of. And I hate to tell them, you are not going to find Francisco Liriano ever again. Get it out of your head, okay? You're going to get rehab projects, and believe me, they're going to be rehab projects.
Yeah.
Liriano was an exception.
And that's where we get most of our catchers, Dave. So you mentioned Siriano or Cervelli. First thought was, oh, come on now. The Yankees are going to get rid of one of their catchers. We'll get him. You know what I mean? Because we got the last couple of them, did we not? We did. So come on.
We did. Martin and Cervelli both.
Who's this kid catching for the Yankees now? Maybe he's about ready to be on the stack, huh? We'll take him. Anyhow, hey, Steve Miller, anything you want to add about Major League Baseball this year? Your thoughts? Maybe,
Well, Dave addressed it at the end there. The Achilles heel for the Pirates all year was their pitching rotation and the fact that their bullpen, middle and closers, disasters. I think they need
except for Rivero,
arms.
Steve. Felipe Rivero's the real deal as a closer.
We'll give you that one.
Yeah,
but, I mean, there's too much. There's too many intangibles, and I don't know if they keep Garrett Cole. I could see Cole going too.
That could happen. You're right. You're right. That could be another one.
And I'm not sure what's in Indianapolis coming out of in their rotation that's worth anything. I think they need to spend $25 million on arms next year. I think they have enough firepower if they can keep the other team below 3 runs a game.
Yeah. Okay.
I agree.
Marte doesn't have an 80-game suspension. There's half your season gone to one guy who's supposed to be the foundation of your franchise. We're getting rid of our franchise guy McCutchen, and they're putting all their eggs in Marte's basket.
Right.
Boom, he gets an 80-game suspension. Goodbye season. That's it.
There we go. Well, anyhow, let me get your final thoughts here real quick, Dave. World Series winner, and who's the manager of the year?
Boy, I'm going to go with Hinch of the Astros for the manager of the year, and I'm going to go with I'll tell you what, my heart is with Houston.
Wouldn't it be nice?
It's Houston Dodgers, but I'm afraid that the Dodgers will end up being the world champions this year. Now, I have nothing against the Dodgers.
No.
They're a pretty amazing team. So, but unfortunately for Houston, a great story for them in light of the flood and everything that happened there with the hurricane.
Houston strong.
To at least have one thing that they can really rally around.
Right. Hey, Steve, what's your thoughts? World Series winner.
I would have to agree
manager.
with Dave on manager of the year. I don't, unless it's Joe Girardi, because who thought the Yankees were going to actually even make the playoffs this year?
Mm-hmm.
But Houston's going to be the lovable team because of now J.J. Watt's hurt from the Texans, so somebody has to carry that torch for the city.
Right.
And I think the Astros can do that. And the Dodgers, God bless them. Who'd have thought they'd be playing for the World Series the year after Vince Scully retires?
Oh, yeah.
Bring him back and let him do a game.
Let him do a game.
Let him do the
come
clinching
on.
game or something.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly.
Artistry like that should be appreciated till it's gone.
You'd be like an honorary spokesperson, just for like one game. Sort of like you did Dave at the Bald Eagle game. You brought in Joe and you brought in Steve. It's like, come on, I'm bringing my friends in here. Come on,
well, the one
that
comes to mind for me is the night, and this really, I hate the Pirates for don't hate. I guess maybe hate's a little bit of a strong word, but I'm still a fan. I still watch their games, except this year I didn't watch much of anything of them in September. Mm-hmm. When they brought Bob Prince back into the booth after the man had throat cancer issues.
Yeah.
And they brought him back into the booth and they wanted to act like they did such a great thing. And it's you bastards fired him. Yeah. And you basically stuck a dagger in his heart.
Yeah.
Because that was his life.
They expedited his illness then, Dave, is what he did, right? It's sort of like I kept telling my aunt kept saying for years about Joe Paterno, he's got to go. So I called her up one day and said, Joe's gone now. How do you feel? You know what I'm saying? She felt, I didn't mean like that, she said. So you understand where I'm coming from here.
Yeah. But I've always had a bone to pick with the Pirates. And also, at the time, KDKA was the radio station that was the Pirates' flagship. And they acted like they really did something great. And it's like, for God's sake, you killed the man 12 years ago.
Yeah, not literally, folks. They didn't kill him, but Dave was saying, okay. Well, listen, let's move on to more pleasant things. Speaking of people that are killed off and lost their jobs, how about Steigerwald? He's not around anymore, is he?
He gets to do the pre-games now on Penguins Radio. Radio.
But Mike is still there somewhere, right? I mean, Mike Lang is still, God love him, he's still doing the games on radio.
Although Mike has scaled back his duties this year where he's not going to go out on the road trips with the team.
Yeah, he's getting a little older.
The young guy who had been hosting the pregame show and the intermission shows during the radio broadcast is going to be the road play-by-play guy. Mike's going to go to some of the games, but not very many. So he's kind of now in that same mode that Scully was in at the end of his term with the Dodgers, because that's what Vin was doing,
Mike's
basically
just
home games.
He's getting up there in age. Greg Banks in the studio, Dave Shannon, by the way, live, and Altoona, and Steve Miller, by the way, hanging on in Milesburg, trying to figure out what are these guys doing on this radio show. Well, we asked that same question, Steve, but we're at the portion of the show now where I pretty much let Dave run with this, but you can talk with him too, because we're talking about Pittsburgh Penguin hockey. Now, Dave, the Penguins came up short against the Lightning, second leg of that back-to-back game. Tell me what's going on with these Penguins, and then we can talk maybe later about Las Vegas, because they're just amazing what's going on in hockey.
Yeah, I thought that Vegas would be a good team. I think the expansion draft, they really picked a lot of good players. Just a couple to come to mind are Fleury and Neal. They got two good guys there, and they got a lot of other good guys out of the NHL. I just happen to remember them because they're old Penguins.
I'm going to let Steve take over co-hosting for a minute. So, Steve, if you have questions, ask Dave. Dave, you ask him, and vice versa. I'll be back in 3 minutes. Keep talking.
All right. But the Penguins now at 3-2-1, and it's very early in the season. Antti Niemi has been somewhat of a disappointment when I've seen him in the net. He just seems to be having trouble adjusting to the way the Penguins play in front of him. I'm going to be interested to see if Niemi in some way, shape, or form picks up as the season goes along, because if not, they need to get Tristan Jarry up there from the Scranton Wilkes-Barre Penguins and train him to be Matt Murray's backup as the season goes along. Rest of the team, Mike Sullivan's still playing some games with the lines and moving guys around, but I think he has a really solid top-to-bottom team. He's got 4 good lines that he can work with. Their penalty kill is good. You got to love Greg McKegg is one of the guys they picked up in the offseason, and he just plays hard every game. I don't see him take a shift off when he's out there on the ice. So Greg McKegg, a big part of what's going to be, I think, another good season for the Penguins, and possibly a return to the Stanley Cup playoffs and another cup this year. But for right now, Sid's Sid, and he's not really lost a step. The one thing I have noticed, though, a lot of people always said that Sid cheated in the face-off circle, and that's as they say, point of emphasis in the NHL this year. The face-offs, they can actually end up throwing you in the penalty box as far as being thrown out of the face-off circle. And so, I've seen Sid be thrown out of any number of face-offs this year. So he's not conforming to the new rules that they have and the enforcement that they're doing with the face-offs in this particular season. Are
you following this, Steve? Hello, Steve.
I am. I was going to jump in and say, the great thing about the NHL is it's October the 16th.
Yeah.
And, Dave, you've talked about how the Cubs sort of just treaded water for the first 2/3 of the season. Mm-hmm. I think a lot of hockey teams, it takes them till they get to around Christmas before they really are gelled.
Yeah, exactly.
And, the Pens are going to know what they have, and everybody's healthy right now. But, that's, January is the time when people start getting 100%, or if they're injured, they take that time off. So February, March, they're ready to go. April playoffs start, and then by the 4th of July, we crown the Stanley Cup champion.
Hey, Steve,
it's about as long a season as NASCAR.
Yeah, it is. And, oh, my God. It's almost like even longer than the NBA, and I can't stand that. But I do watch, at least when it comes to the playoffs. Now, let me tell you, Steve, the history of this show. Dave and I got together. I was living in Johnstown producing television back there, and Dave did the game of the week for me as the announcer. So we started this little internet show, right? But a couple of years ago, I noticed Dave was getting a little angry. There was a coach with the Penguins. And I got to be quite honest, Dave harped on this poor guy for, half of the season. Because I kept saying, Christmas is going to be pivotal. Dave wanted this guy gone. And he harped on it. Guess what? They fired the guy around Christmas. Of course, Sullivan came in, took over that team, and he's taken him to the Stanley Cup. You see how this works on this show? So if I let Dave talk long enough, I figure something's going to happen, because it's early in the season yet, Dave. Calm down. We got like another 8 months to go, at least.
One of the things I did want to say before we walk away from the Penguins, and that is Ole Mata, I think, has stepped up his game in a big way. He has looked really good here in the early season. I hope that plays out through the rest of the season. Ole's had a bad habit of giving up the puck in the neutral zone or making bad passes. I don't see him doing that. Every once in a while he makes a bad pass, but I think every player on that team does, except for maybe Crosby.
Yeah.
And so, I'm willing to give him that. And he's also scoring this year as well. So anytime you're getting points off the blue line, guys, that's a good thing.
Well,
and got to tip my cap to Ole Mata. I think he really worked on his game.
Can I mention some guys that I've just followed throughout the years, and guys that I think they're really not up to the potential yet, as Steve said, because it's early in the season. But you got Brian Rush, you got Connor Sheary, Jake Gensel, Matt Hunwick, and Sid's even getting ready to do a lot of scoring along with Malkin, man. So it's like, yeah, these guys haven't been on the scoreboard a lot, but you know what? It's coming, man. It's coming.
Oh, yeah. No, they have a powerful offensive team. And like I was talking, I don't know if you heard me talking about Greg McKegg, but
no.
McKegg is the real deal. And I just love his enthusiasm when he gets out there. And the other thing is they ended up trying to make that into a speed line now because McKegg goes pretty hard, and he's teamed up with Hagelin most of the time. And the other night, I think he slipped Kessel down on that line, or maybe it was Sheary. No, it was Sheary.
Yeah.
Sheary was down on that line because Hornquist had come back. Patrick Hornquist unable to start the season because of injury, but now he's back. And so he automatically went up to Sid's line. So you have Sid and Sid, Gensel, and Hornquist on a line. So that made room, and Sheary moved down. So when you put Sheary and Hagelin and McKegg together, they fly up and down the ice. So,
well, how appropriate that you would talk about McKegg because, hey, Steve, I was just downstairs getting another beer from my keg while he was doing that, so I had no idea he was talking about the guy, but how appropriate. Steve, let me ask you this before we wrap up this hockey thing. Sure. You and Jake are pretty good friends, and I remember Jake when he was like a councilman or probably even a township supervisor or something way back in his career, okay? Did he get free tickets to that? Did you guys get free tickets to that Penguins game over there at the Ice Pavilion at Penn State? I mean, did they get him like some tickets? It's like, hey, he's a rep. We got to make sure he's in the building. Just when
he was in Harrisburg that night. He did not go to the game, and I didn't get any tickets either. So I was a little bummed out at that.
That was a raw deal.
That's what I'm thinking, Dave. The first person you want to invite is like your state rep, man. You know what I mean? I'm thinking.
Yes, you would think the guy who protects Penn State in the Senate would get a phone call, but he was actually doing his job down in Harrisburg.
Oh, man, he's probably the only one down there working as far as I'm concerned. Oh, but that's another show. Listen, I'm calling you back to be on my show, which is the Greg Banks Show. It'll be a talk show starting in November. We'll talk politics and all that good stuff. But let me ask you this, Steve, since you're a friend of Dave's. Let me ask you, like, a little bit about your history. So you were in broadcasting at one time, and you were on the Bald Eagle game. What were you doing at Bald Eagle game that night? You said you were upstairs, and I didn't recall what you were doing up there.
Well, the alumni group for Bald Eagle area is called the Eagle Ambassadors, and they have invested in a YouTube channel.
Ooh.
And they broadcast extracurricular activities, and I happen to do football and boys basketball live on the internet for all the home games.
Cool. So you're doing video and everything?
Yes.
Wow, Dave.
Yes,
wait, think about
that. Bald Eagle is shooting themselves in the foot by providing free access to all game films on the internet for home football games and for basketball.
Wow. Yeah.
Yeah, that could be turned into a revenue generator.
Well, that would involve the athletic director, and he's busy enough as it is. So
now, is this something?
Doug does have his hands full.
Is this something that you guys are doing?
It's a separate thing.
Yeah.
It's run by the Eagle Ambassadors, which is a 501c3 thing.
Yeah.
But it's like an alumni thing, and they the whole idea was behind it was a broadcast club for students. That was one of the reasons they put it together.
Oh, cool.
And my son, when he was a senior, wanted to get into broadcasting.
Yeah.
So the first year, he broadcast with his dad during basketball and football.
So the old man, he's going to follow in your footsteps then probably, huh?
No, he's venturing into other areas where he wants to make money instead of just going to games for free and occasionally get a bottle of water or a hot dog.
Hey, come on, tell him money's like nothing, but the chicks are free. That's why Dave and I got in the business. How'd that work out, Dave?
I got in it for the chicks.
Yeah, how'd that work out?
Yeah, right.
Jeez. Yeah, like we got a 401k, man. I just don't know where it is yet. Anyhow, hey, Steve Miller, thank you, man, for joining us on the show. You see how this runs. It's just a lot of fun.
It was a lot of fun. Thanks for having me. Anytime.
All right.
Call.
Let's do it again. Dave Shannon, thank you, man. We'll talk coming up Friday night. Dave Shannon and Chad States on the road to Martinsburg, PA, as the Bearcats try to be 9-0 after they take on the Scarlet Dragons. All the action here on the airnetwork.net and 94.1 FM. Thanks for joining us for Monday Night Sports Talk. We'll do it again next Monday. Thank you for listening, and good night, everyone.
Good night.